Hey guys, it is NCS Fan 001 here for the road to my 697th Platinum Trophy. Today's game is Ratchet and Clank All for One. Oh wow, that was a terrible miss right there. So, this is a Ratchet and Clank game, of course, and it is actually the first Ratchet and Clank game that I have ever done. So that's an interesting milestone to have picked this one to be first. And with that, ironically, this is the hardest one as far as I can tell. Or no, let me rephrase that. I don't think it's the hardest one, but it is by far the rarest. The Platinum Trophy is a sub 10% on PSN profiles, which is really, really weird for a Ratchet and Clank game, because these games are usually pretty common. I mean, they're not all, ripped apart level. Okay, so I think that's like 2/3 of where I need to go for this last trophy. So, it's not that it's a particularly hard game, but it is a co-op driven game, and it has some major issues to it. It can be quite buggy if you're playing it in co-op. Ghost convinced me and Killer to play this game, and I guess I kind of wish it hadn't have been my first impression of the Ratchet and Clank franchise. Because, everyone had that one, kids franchise they played as when they were younger. You either had Ratchet and Clank, you had Spyro, you had Crash Bandicoot, you had Sly Cooper. So let's see, Ratchet and Clank, Sly Cooper, I don't remember what the other one was, but you had, a few different, old kids franchises, and everyone had, one or the other, and this was one of them. I did not grow up on this franchise. I grew up more on the Sly Cooper franchise, as well as, Nickelodeon games, more so than anything else. So this is actually pretty unique. We're getting this weird PlayStation 3 syncing, because this is being done through whatever the current version of PlayStation Now is. I don't even know what it's called anymore, because they've changed things around a lot. It's actually the first time I've done a Platinum through this system, which is unique for me. So it's not that it's a particularly hard game by any means. It's not even all that time consuming. You can do this Platinum in under 15 hours. But I can't say this was a very enjoyable game. It doesn't play very well. It doesn't play well. It's kind of buggy. It's just not really an overall fun experience. And I don't really recommend playing this one unless you're a big fan of the Ratchet and Clank franchise. Now, like I did say, the Platinum Trophy is very, very rare in this game by Ratchet and Clank standards, because on here you can see it's a sub 2%, which is pretty crazy, and on PSN profiles it's a sub 10%, which is still pretty good, and a lot of the trophies are in that uncommon to rare category, which is kind of nice. So that is definitely a way that you can get a few easy, uncommon to rare trophies if you want to put those on your list. So for the Platinum Trophy, overall it's not too difficult. I would put it at around a 3 out of 10 in difficulty and 10 to 15 hours. In fact, we can check the time real quick. I think I'm going to do that real quick. Let's see. So, well, I thought I could, but I guess I can't because it's a PS3 game. Yeah, so I can't do that. Well, dang, I was hoping I would be able to show how much time I spent playing the game. I can't imagine it was more than, 10 to 15 hours, because we knocked out most of the game within just a few sessions of co-op, because me, Ghost, and Killer played through the whole thing in co-op, or at least the vast majority of it in co-op, and then we just went back and got some of the miscellaneous trophies each on our own. So, for the Platinum Trophy, when we look at the actual list, this trophy was fairly easy. I don't really remember how Ghost did it, but he was the one that kind of carried us through this, because him with Ratchet and Clank is more like, me with Fallout. That's one of the franchises he knows really well, versus, Fallout's a franchise that I know really well. You get what I mean. This is a story-related trophy. I would argue that this is the most difficult trophy in the game, the 85% of the exploding crates. You're really not allowed to miss very many of them. And the worst part of it is that if you die at any point, if you wipe, not die, but wipe. You can die as long as your partner is still on screen alive, you're fine. But if you wipe to where it goes back to the last checkpoint, it voids this trophy, so you have to restart the mission and watch a 5-minute long cutscene at the beginning of the mission every time you screw up. And believe me, it will happen a few times just because the game is so janky. Sometimes it'll send you flying off of a launch pad to where you're not supposed to go because it decides to drop you early or something. Sometimes you'll just get knocked back by an exploding crate somewhere, and it'll knock you off the map, or it'll stun you long enough that the ground beneath you sinks away. This trophy was annoying. This one took me quite a few tries to get. It took me a good 45 minutes to get. It shouldn't be as hard as it is. It's partially the fact that the game doesn't work that well with this particular trophy, because sometimes it seems like you'll hit them and it'll still manage to damage you even if you're kind of far away, and knock you back and get you stunned on top of a crashing platform. And I got it on my try where I actually got this trophy. It was crazy because it's at that area where you have 5 crates on sinking platforms, pretty much. It's like the last major group until the very end of the level. And I hit 2 or 3 of them and died because the game just did the knockback thing and it wouldn't let me get to the ledge in time. But the trophy unlocked from the last one I hit, so it was pretty close. Story-related trophy. This one seemed like it was going to be difficult, but it's actually pretty easy. If you play as Quark and use his quantum shield, it makes you invincible from the beetle attacks, so it's really not that bad. It only took me a couple of tries once I knew that. And I think one of the tries was because I wiped during the quantum shield miscellaneous trophy that we're going to see a little bit later. Story-related trophy, story-related. This one's actually seems to be bugged in a good way, because we got this definitely without killing all of the slorgs within the level. We got it a lot earlier than that, just by knocking a good number of them into the water, so maybe this one's bugged in a good way. Story-related, pretty tough to miss. It's during the section when you're on the back of the Iron Giant looking guy. Story-related, this one's not too bad as long as you have some good coordination between the 3 players or the 2 players or whatever you're doing. Story-related trophy, this one's not too bad because Ghost knew the path, so me and Killer would just jump off the side and let him run through it. It's not too bad. The time limit is generous enough that it's completely doable. Final battle trophy. Then you have another miscellaneous trophy. This one was actually kind of tough because the fields without the energy repositories, this one took several tries. We were able to get it after a few tries once we sort of understood exactly what to do and what the path was. But it was a little bit finicky. It still took several tries to get through. It's one of the rare trophies in the game, as you guys can see. 8 enemies with 1 shot is pretty tough to miss if you have the right weapons for it. The 4 enemies at the same time with Pyroblast is pretty easy. A lot of these trophies can be farmed at the Nest entrance checkpoint in the Chapter Select feature. That is a great place to farm a lot of these. 3 enemies with 1 attack with the Blitzer is pretty easy to do there. The Critters, you might get this one naturally if you're playing in co-op with other people that have an upgraded Critter Strike, because it's arguably the best weapon in the game. The Darkstar Fission Tether, I think we did that at the Nest entrance. The Mr. Zircon, that's a great place to farm it as well, the Nest entrance. The melee kills, if you don't get it naturally, you can easily farm it at Nest entrance. This one is best done by spawning at the Nest level checkpoint before the entrance. It's called like Vestige Cliffs or something like that. That's a great place to do it because you get a whole bunch of the easy enemies and you can throw the wrench at them. That actually counts as a melee kill. So just make sure you do it in split screen with a second controller or a second online player, or else you will not be able to get it because your AI partner will kill everything for you by accident, or I guess on purpose. This one's pretty easy, but it's a Ratchet-specific trophy. This is a Quark-specific trophy. This is a Clink-specific trophy, and this is the final trophy I got. It is the Nefarious-specific trophy. So each of these require you to play as a certain character within the game. None of them are difficult, but you do need to get, I think it's 5,000 bolts for each character to be able to purchase this special ability, and then you can farm it at the Nest entrance checkpoint. Except for this one. This one is best farmed in the level with all of the giant beetles that you have to deal with, because there's a bunch of turrets there that you can do it with. 8 enemies in 2 seconds is pretty much unmissable. The Overload is pretty much unmissable, especially if you're playing in co-op. This one's pretty easy. You just have to make sure that you know it's there, but I think you do need a second controller to be able to do this one. You have to buy all the weapons. There's like 12 in the game. You can do that during your playthrough. But we'll talk about upgrades here in a minute once we get to one of the later trophies. The 500 enemies is pretty tough to miss. The 50 kills with the vacuum is pretty easy to miss. It can be easily farmed at the Nest entrance, but it's not really something I did a lot of because, in all honesty, the vacuum isn't a particularly effective weapon, per se, in the game. So the big grindier trophy in the game is to have 1 million bolts banked at once. So this means you have to have 1 million bolts available to you at any given time. Not a million total across the game, but a million total at any one given time. So for this trophy, if you were playing through the game in co-op, you get significantly more bolts than you would if you were playing through it solo. So I highly, highly recommend playing through this game in co-op, and you will get many, many times more bolts than you would otherwise. To farm the bolts, you want to load up the final chapter of the game, and one of the, not the first checkpoint, I don't think it is, but one of the like mid-level checkpoints is a great place to do it because you can get quite a few thousand bolts per run of the area. It's not that it's that difficult, but it is a grindier trophy, so if you're playing this in solo, you're going to have a much more unpleasant time going for this because it's going to require a lot more time grinding than it is if you're playing in co-op. Because by the end of the playthrough, Ghost easily had it, Killer got it on the last mission, and I got it on, I think, one replay of one of those last few areas of the game, so it wasn't too bad. Once you reach the million bolts, then you want to fully upgrade all your weapons. The only things that are really worth upgrading during your main playthrough are the Combustor weapon and the Critter Strike are both great weapons to do that on. But otherwise, you kind of want to save your bolts as much as possible for once you get the million bolts trophy, just to save a little bit of time later on. So you have an online trophy here for reaching the online lobby and playing an online game. So those are your only two actual true online trophies. They're both very, very easy and can be done in, 5 seconds with a boosting partner especially. And there are actually still a few people playing this game, which was really, really surprising. There's actually a couple of times where we had randoms try to join in. So clearly the game is not dead yet, which again is very surprising. But I would still recommend, if you're going to be doing this game, definitely knock these two trophies out first because they're the only ones that require an online partner. You also have to play a single-player game, which is pretty much unmissable, and you have to play an offline-only game with 2 players. This one's going to require 2 controllers, so as long as you have 2 controllers, you're good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and sync up the trophies here, but really, aside from that, blowing up all the explosives crates trophy, this one, it wasn't a hard platinum, it wasn't an overly time-consuming one, but it was really just not an enjoyable experience, and again, I really don't recommend it unless you're like a big fan of the Ratchet & Clank franchise and want to do all of them. So, level 818, 98%, 25,368 total trophies, 697 platinums, 4,536 gold, 6,691 silvers, 13,444 bronzes. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like, favorite, share, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell if you haven't already. And I will see you guys back here for the next video.